Spoilers for Attack on Titan, the TV show, and I will not be talking about the manga at all. When I sat down to watch Attack on Titan, the final season, something didn't sit well with me. While I sat down to watch AOT for the first time, I was pulled in by the intense story. I sat down and binged episode after episode. The plot twists would always catch me off guard. The Titans terrorizing the towns and people always felt so horrifying and real, especially when your favorite characters are at the front of the conflict. Even when Titans take the backseat in Season 3, the political conflict and intensity of the ODM fight scenes and the ethics of killing people is a great setup for the later half of Season 3 and Season 4. The foreshadowing is also so much fun, and the small details sprinkled around the episodes add so much mystery and have so much payoff when you do realize why those details were there. Yet something really started feeling off with the final season. So a possible reason for the show being a lot different is the way I watched it. I watched the final season weekly, and the first few seasons I binge watched, so that could be a massive difference. But when I did rewatch the show and binge watched the whole thing as opposed to watching it weekly, the final season still felt about the same. So I'm gonna say it's probably not, and have to do with my how I watched it. My next theory of why the final season was different was that the foreshadowing wasn't as big of a part as the previous seasons, but then I realized that's not necessarily true because the whole Eren time traveling thing was like a huge plot twist reveal that happened in the final season, which I thought was also one of the coolest parts of the final season. And so I kind of was like, that's probably not it, just because the plot twists were still there. Also, there was the whole plot point where Levi died, but honestly, I'm going to be real with you with that one. I wasn't too much of a fan of that just because Levi is a OP character, and the only reason they had him, air quotes, die is because they just needed to write him out for the intense fights, which he could have easily been useful. With a bit more merit is that the stakes in the final season were just a bit too high for people to relate to or understand. In the first few seasons, a huge part of it was humanity's nature to simply want to survive. That's something that everyone can relate to, even if in the show it's happening with Titans. But we can still kind of relate to that. It's part of our innate human nature. And then also adding layers of betrayal and personal needs of vengeance is also character explorations that are very easy to understand. And then there's obviously the simple character motivations of Eren wanting to kill Titans, Armin wanting to learn about the world outside, and Mikasa not wanting to lose the rest of her family. Those character motivations are so simple to understand, yet so impactful. And the politics that are constantly affecting the world are very simple and kind of relatable to society. Having a the whole concept of having a super weapon that people are fighting over is also relatively simple. And then the large lore drops work well as well because it's still shrouded in a sense of mystery because we don't necessarily know what those lore implications mean yet. Problems start to occur when they introduce the new conflict. Eren has a villain, and his whole massive genocide plot. His whole concept of, if we kill everyone on the other side of the sea, that means conflict will be resolved, no more fighting, everything will be good. And I won't say that doesn't work in the sense of Eren's plot characteristics, because he's just that's just who he is at his core. So, in a sense, Eren being like that makes sense. The character motivations are there. My main issue with his conflict is that it's so grand scale and so huge that the conflict starts to become more one-sided. With the whole Reiner situation, we understand him as like a character that is trying to be a hero. Whereas in Aaron's side, he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he still wants to do it. And it kind of makes the conflict one-sided. It makes it that, oh, these guys are the good guys, and then Aaron is the bad guy. The conflict is so boiled down and simplistic that there isn't any more like moral gray. And I think they try fixing this by adding characters like Jean, Connie, and Mikasa, trying to pick which side they want to be on. Mikasa's choice is the one that I have the most gripes with, because her choosing to be against Eren is a bit weird, but I guess we can understand that she is, at the end of the day, just a good person. I really like what they did with Jean and Connie, because they both were looking for their own personal things. Like Connie wanted to save his mother in the last few minutes of this disastrous world, and Jean had the option to like live out his happy life, but he was like, no, I'd rather not live a happy life at the cost of literally everyone else. So they try adding some sense of conflict, which works, but still isn't as, I think, moving as the previous ones, because it's just so out there and outlandish that something of this massive scale is like even being considered a good thing can be a bit ridiculous at times, but I think they make it work well with Jean. So while editing the video, I realized I went on a pretty long tangent about Gabby, and just the TLDR is that I think Gabby is a pretty good character at the end of the day, even though she was annoying at first, and I personally don't think she was the reason that the show felt so weird. I think she was just Eren with less reasons to like her at first, but I think she grows as a character and really isn't the reason that the plot is so weird and different from the first few seasons of Attack on Titan. So the story really significantly changes and starts to feel a lot different once Eren opens that drawer in his basement. Essentially, the conflict and climax up to that point has been resolved. So a lot of characters like Armin's main plot motivation has kind of dwindled down at this point. The only character that really stays consistent through the plot, through the time skip, is Eren, because his whole idea of finding freedom stays similar, just more radicalized. And that's where I think the main issue happens. It's how these characters change as the point of the story changes. When you find out there's humanity outside the walls, the scouts really don't have to fight for humanity anymore. They can start fighting for themselves. And the whole setup for like the freedom that they've been getting has been relatively useless, and they still have a lot more to do if they truly want to be free. And so the Jaegerists split off from the scouts, and then you've got the scouts that truly want to fight for the humanity outside the walls. And this ragtag new scouts group, well, I'd say old scouts because they're still fighting for humanity, but that group is a bit weird because it's made of characters that you either hate, like Reiner and Annie, and characters that you expect to be on this kind of group, like Levi and Hanges, but it's also made of weird characters that feel like the plot is just moving them to wherever the plot needs them to be, like Armin and Mikasa. As I've stated previously, I've had issues with Mikasa's whole character arc at this point, where I do like that she's become free of Eren, but it just feels so weird that she's still moving forward to, fight for the hope of humanity. And a character that I've really stayed away from talking about a lot is Armin, and this is where I really think
the whole plot and concept of Attack on Titan really changes, and Armin's no longer really a front runner. His concept of character development is just that he was chosen over Erwin, and the problem with him being chosen over Erwin was Levi chose him partially because he had an idea of what to do after, like, him and Erwin were dead, and they had to choose between bringing one back. And Armin being chosen is significant because he was the one that had the plans on what we could do outside the walls and explore. The problem there is that the exploration's already been done. Off screen, of course. So Armin starts to fall stale, and he just does what all the other characters want him to do, or what the story needs him to be at. Like, at first, when he could have easily, done something about the whole Marleyan invasion or the Eren and Zeke meeting up plot, he's thrown in jail and doesn't do anything about it. And then afterwards, he's like, well, let's help Eren because he can't be doing anything that's too bad. And then he's wrong, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna come out and try to stop Eren now. And really, Armin doesn't feel like a strong leader anymore. He was a character that really moved the plot and pace, and he kind of gets sidelined. And I feel like the viewers also get sidelined in that sense, because originally Armin is that character that you kind of want to see win, because he's always trying to help other people out and whatnot. But eventually, by the end of the story, Armin is sidelined, and you as the viewer also feel kind of sidelined, because you don't see the scouts being as active in the story as usual. And that's really where the viewer's hearts are at. You, the viewer, are supposed to be in love with the scouts. And as the story goes on, the scouts become less significant. Or at least they become less significant in the way they were supposed to be significant. Whether it be your interest in Armin as a character or your patriotism towards a fictional regiment, we can, at least most of us, can agree that Attack on Titan Season 4 feels a lot different. And some of it can just be chalked up simply to the fact that it's a different animation style, and that our protagonist is the big bad. Whatever it be, we're going to have to see where Attack on Titan goes next, whether it be for the better or for the worse.